Haha, welcome back to the second hour of Lovebabz, Lovetalk. It's a great morning when Enroue is in the house. Hey,
Woot woot.
Enroue.
Bah, bah, bah.
Did you enjoy
Good
Samara
morning.
Joy last night?
Yes. She was glorious. Her band was tight and amazing. Yeah, it was a wonderful show.
I love her. I am such a fan of her. So
Yes, well, there was a whole shout out to you, Babs.
it was kind of cool and unnerving at the same time. It's
Well, I
like,
think it shows also, right, the impact of a person, right? So when we're in a relationship with others, we can sometimes forget, like, oh, like what we enjoy, what we yearn for, what we're passionate about. When we communicate that, that can have an impact to then create other things, right? So here, that helped to bring Samara Joy here for Arts and Ideas. And it can also, right, lead to other changes, which we may not be aware of, right? So we can very often get caught in the like, well, that's too big an issue, or how could I make such a change, right? And like it is also just about people talking to people.
yeah, yeah,
So thank you,
yeah.
Babs.
No, listen, I love her. I've seen her so many times. I'm going to see her again in August on the Vineyard. So I,
Mm.
I I just love good music. And I like this thing. Everybody has an artist. You have music that you grew up listening to and you followed them your whole life. So she's one of these people that you could follow now
Oh
and you
yeah.
could watch her career, you could watch her grow and develop and get, more seasoned at this. So
Oh my goodness. I mean, her, for those who don't know, look her up and find out. The first time I ever saw a video of her singing, it was surreal because of the richness and maturity of her voice to come out of someone so young. And so
mhm.
exactly what you're saying, like there's only refinement and
Yeah.
richness that's coming. Like that's
Yeah.
and
Like
hopefully what a long and blessed career that she'll have. Amazing.
Yeah, yeah. So, how are
Amazing.
you? Let's get started with a prayer. Let's get our prayers out the way. Not out the way, but let's center in prayers and then we could not out the way. I didn't mean I'm when I say out the way, I mean like
I know
let's
what you mean.
start with our prayers and because that's one of my favorite things.
Yeah, yeah. Like we want to start well. We want to start.
Yeah.
All right. So this is a Yoruba prayer, chant to our ancestors, honoring the male lineage, the female lineage, and all of our ancestors, regardless of gender, and the ashe that they've left for us, right? The blessings that they have left for us, the aspects of ourselves, the richness, the creativity, the ways that we're in the world that they've left for us. And we are thanking them for that. And we are saying that we're using those things today. So that's this chant. And as I chant it, it's in Yoruba, but like let those words or let whatever you need to do to welcome your ancestors, to welcome that aspect of their love for you to be present with you today at this moment. Ba 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 tó fún wa ṣe o. Ba 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 tó fún wa ṣe. Ba 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 tó fún wa ṣe o. Ba 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 tó fún wa ṣe. Àṣetẹ̀ fún wa là ń lò yìí o. Ba 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 tó fún wa ṣe. Ba yeye tó fún wa ṣe o. Ba yeye tó fún wa ṣe. Ba yeye tó fún wa ṣe o. Ba yeye tó fún wa ṣe. Àṣetẹ̀ fún wa là ń lò yìí o. Ba yeye tó fún wa ṣe. Ba egungun tó fún wa ṣe o. ìbà egungun tó fún wa ṣe. Ìbà egungun tó fún wa ṣe o. Ìbà egungun tó fún wa ṣe. Àṣetè fún wa ńlá lóyè o. Ìbà egungun tó fún wa ṣe. Ìbà egungun tó fún wa ṣe. Ìbà egungun tó fún wa ṣe. Àṣẹ.
Ashe, amen.
So, a couple of things come to mind. Unless there's something that people have been planting in you to relate to me or to ask or to bring up in these sessions. Sometimes people can ask, like, what is the point? Like, our ancestors are gone, right? And that's all in the past. And what's the point? Leave them be. What's the point? And I think of it like, so many times we literally talk about like our roots, right? We talk about like a tree. So our ancestors and our relationship with them helps us to be grounded, helps us to be stable, gives us support to live and to receive that nurturing from them, right? Roots pulling up this nourishment from the soil. But it's not just to be focused on that. It's so that we can live, right? So we can extend upwards and outwards so that we can, extend these branches into what this life is. And I just think that that's, it's not the only thing we pay attention to, but it's fundamental. And it's resources that we can then be connected to and to draw upon. And that's really the point, not to kind of keep going back, keep going, oh, I wish I was then, or they had it good, or whatever the notion of, right, the good old days. But to really be connected to them so that we get to live fully now and explore what this life has for us now. So I've just been thinking about that. And also this piece, even of myself, it's landed differently recently of, I've had, so this may change, but I've most likely lived more life than I have left. So, I'm 56, right? I could get past 112. That would be a thing, right? But, it's more likely that, I've lived more life than I have left. And it's still living though, right? It's still, what does life have for me now with this, right? With this body, with this time, with this presence? How can I still be present even as so much changes? So that was something I was thinking about as I've been thinking about the last couple of days, but was reminded as I was singing this chant.
And so what comes up for you when you think about that? Like, I'm always conscious of my mortality. Since I turned 50, which I'm 61. And I remember, I say this to people, my mother died when she was 57. So I had this creeping anxiety about getting to 57. Yeah. Seriously, I didn't even know it was a thing until I could feel it in myself. Like, I just have this little bit of anxiety. And when I got to 57, I was like, okay, I felt like I was just waiting, right? And then once I got past it, I felt very liberated and free. But it was really once I got out of the 50s that I was like, But I do feel acutely aware of my own mortality. And I think about, I don't have another 60 years in front of me. I just don't believe that. So.
Right. Right. I mean,
and I don't think I
if
want
it comes,
that.
Well, if it's like, there are all kinds of ways that this notion of living long gets prioritized over quality of life. So I want to live long and well, right, in good health, as opposed to just like eking out. I think that's I won't say it's for everybody, but I think, many people, right? Let me have my full facilities. Let me, be as present, even as I know that, the body is just not going to be, it ain't going to be what, I already, when I turned was when I was in my mid 20s. So I played basketball through high school and through college. So when I hit my mid 20s, I already knew my body was not like it was. I mean, I remember being like 16 and 17 and like playing basketball outside in the summer, like 4 or 5 hours a day, every day, just running. And in mid 20s, I was like, oh, I can't do that. So luckily, I kind of had that early, right, in my
Hmm.
like the living piece around like what the body is. But there's, that's also hitting me differently. Like there's something that's happened in the last couple years where, they're like, oh, the morning aches, the thing happened in the shoulder. Let me work to get that better. And then it shifts somewhere else. And then I got to focus on that. And then that gets better and it shifts somewhere else. And it's like, oh, so this is the aging, right? This is the like, oh, that's
Yeah.
just the the groan that happens when I like get up or sit down, like, oh, right? Like, oh, that's a real thing. Elders, turns out they were right. And my wife's Oma grandmother, who passed when she was like early 90s, she once said, she's like, it's not fun getting old in terms of like with the body, right? Not even getting into like memory or old stuff coming up or things like that, but we're so used to, and this culture is so hyper focused on a certain kind of strength and health in the body as like as a standard, as an ideal, and it then means that as we have to work harder to like just stay the same,
Mm.
there's not a lot of support culturally of like, this is just a different time, like it's okay. How do we
Yeah.
actually have supports for that, it just being
Yeah.
what it is, right? So that's all present as well. But I think my mortality. So this is aging and mortality to me live in some different places. Because when I was again in my 89 to 92, yeah, so like 21 to 23 or so. That's when I was like super depressed, panic attacks, feeling suicidal, being suicidal, not just feeling suicidal. It was a time that I really tried to kill myself and had to make some real decisions about like, am I going to live or die? And okay, so I'm here now. So obviously I chose to live, right? But it was a very conscious decision. So if I'm going to live, am I going to be like sane or am I going to be crazy and kind of live in this fantasy world? Because a lot of stuff around like drugs that I was doing and just kind of this aspect of mental illness and psychosis. And it's like, oh, am I going to live somewhere kind of in that realm and just have people take care of my body? Or am I going to be sane? And so I just said, oh, I'm going to be sane. And so that kind of put me on this very, like, people talk about like a knife's edge in terms of a path, like very clear and disciplined in a certain way. Not just to like exist, but like what is here? And so, I was very close to death in that way. And so the mortality, the kind of that ending coming, I mean, that's also holding a different place now than it did then, but that feels more like a transition, like something changes, right?
Hmm.
I don't know what it is. No one really knows what it is until we're in it. And there's, regardless of how we experience or how people experience communicating with ancestors or, near death experiences or partial death experience, whatever that is, we don't know until that's our experience, really. So it's coming. And so that aspect for me for a long time is not inevitable, like this kind of doom, but just like it's coming. And there's actually there used to be kind of some not interest, like I'm running towards it, but like, oh, that's a real thing. And like, that's going to have its own kind of wonder to it. Like that's like when we talk about life on life's terms, death coming is also that.
Hmm.
And as I have coming out of those hard times really come to love life and its preciousness, I also know I'm gonna miss there are things I'm going to be sad about, and I'm going to miss that kind of ending as well. Like, oh, what makes life life will be ending. That's part of death, right? And so there's not the like, it's not just the I wonder what's going to happen, but it's like, oh, this is a real ending, and that's nothing. It's not can't avoid it, but I don't want to rush it either, right? And so I think that even to connect back to this notion of like a tree with roots in our ancestors, we get to, in this tradition, be connected with what that is, right? Be connected with the how do we get support as we are alive and trying to be fully alive,
Mm-hmm.
to also know that death is a part of that, and getting support to navigate death of our loved ones, death of aspects of identity, um, you know, big death transitions, small ones, and the grief that can come with that, right? And be present with it as a thing that is also normal, and hard. Like there's no, even as I understand it, right? It is still a heartbreaking thing. Just because I have this understanding of like ancestry and death, it doesn't mean like when it happens and loved ones pass away, it's like, oh, that's just a normal thing, right? It's like, oh, the heart wrenchingness is there. But my hope is that it moves through me in a way that's as easeful as possible, as kind of natural as possible, versus the like holding it or preventing it or trying to numb out from it. But let it to move through me, and to not undo life either.
Yeah. Wow. That's some big thinking.
you know, just some small things that we're gonna, just small topics. Light morning topics. But I,
But people, but listen, Enroue, you make a very good point of talking about your 20s and how and something happened and pushed you through. Because I'm seeing the 20-year-olds now
yeah,
struggling with all of that, struggling, and they don't feel like they don't see the next level of that. They don't know how
hmm
to turn the corner, and so they stay right there in that. I want to die. I'm gonna die. I'm gonna, I see it all the time. I
right,
seen it with my own kids. And
right.
it's like, just hang in there, kind of, let's
Well,
make
what's
some different
unfortunate is that
decisions.
there's not, so as a culture, there's not a lot of support for that, right? There's not a like, this is how you navigate that or come to terms with it or live with it or undo it or find the larger meaning and purpose, right? There's so much more. There's so much ease in this culture of avoidance, of numbing out, of doing something else to change the feeling. And for myself, that I did that for several years. I mean, I was smoking a lot of weed. I was doing a lot of hallucinogens and alcohol. I drank a lot of alcohol, but that was like secondary. And some of that was about seeking something,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like there's something that like the like normal life is not giving me, right? So there was that aspect of it, but there was also running. Like there's a way that we can really romanticize, I think, those types of substances and drugs in particular. Like, oh, somehow that's really fundamentally different than alcohol, cocaine, heroin, right? Yeah, every drug, right? Everything you use is different. So let's put that aside. But they can really be used in the same way around addiction. And so that was very much a lot of running that I was doing. And then it turned into like, oh, I'm trying to dig a hole to get out of a hole, right? And everything just came to a head or came crashing down, or I realized like, oh, this is the bottom. And so that's where those decisions get made. Like, oh, so it's either, right, I dive into that or allow myself into that, or just let go, or I make a change to say, is
Mm-hmm.
there a different way? And to be honest, there was no like grand, just like act of will that did it.
No big light on high shining on your
Well,
burning
well,
bush.
so there was this light in the darkness, but it wasn't that. Like, it wasn't the dramatic thing. Because, I mean, someone who did a lot of hallucinogens, like, if I saw the big dramatic thing, that would just fit into it. Like, oh, okay, sure, like that. But in in
Like these are
the
good.
right, right. But there were also things that were happening that it didn't have language for. I mean, there were like things that I came to understand, kind of spiritual, that live in this like spiritual phenomenon realm. That was not, I mean, I knew what being high felt like and the things that happened then. And there were things that were happening. I was like, this is not that. But like, no one's talking about this. I mean, I'm at a lot of this. I was away at college. I was at Middlebury College, small liberal arts college in Vermont, one of the whitest states in the United States, one of the 1,300 students, very different in so many ways, right? And so I was like, I can't talk about this, right? It's fascinating. I could talk about things around like, being high, or like things that will kind of come out of like drug culture, but like spiritual things in this way, or like I'm having these experiences, right? Not connected to it, then people are like, oh well, now you're crazy, right? And so I knew, but I didn't know what to do. And it was actually in a moment of like real darkness, and literally, I mean, I think my eyes may have been closed, or I was just in my room in the dark or something. I don't remember that so much, but this like void of just darkness. And then that's how I really saw life. And my life is like, deep depression, and things felt hopeless. I felt like some alien, right? Nothing. I didn't feel connected really in my heart to people or to things I was doing. And in that darkness, literally, there was this little pinpoint of light.
Mm.
And in that moment, I was like, what's that? Like, here I am, my experience of life is this void, right? There's nothing here for me. I don't feel that. It wasn't intellectual. It's like in my heart, like my being. I was like, I'm not feeling this. And in that, something shone and was like, boop, I'm here. There's something. And I didn't know what it was. And I was curious about it. I was like, so if there's something here that's like catching my attention, that feels, oh, literally, right? Here's the spark of light, of life, and I don't know what it is, then I can't write off this existence as not being for me.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know what it was. I didn't know how to like get to it or what it was, but I knew, I was like, well, I can't say there's nothing. If there's like, and that might be part of me, like part of my personality, right? I was like, well, because like I'm taking off the list, like no meaning, no meaning, no meaning. It's like, oh, a little bit of meaning. It's like, oh, I can't just say there's nothing. And so that became then the work of like, am I going to be sane, crazy? Am I going to live? Am I going to die? Those things really, I had to make choices about. There were very clear choices, not just because I knew that if I didn't choose, and I would just kind of like, I'll just ignore the bad feelings for a little bit, I would always come back to the place of that hopelessness. So I had to really choose, like, okay, if I'm really going to be here and I'm going to explore with that hint of something, and I didn't really see that again in that way. And then I have to try. I have to see, I have to face some things about myself. I have to, where am I contributing to the hopelessness? Where am I in my way? Where are the things that need healing in me so that I can really be here? Right? Oh, look, I'm using these things. That means I'm not feeling. Okay, so what if I start to, not just like the point is to feel, but what if I can explore what would it be like to not be running, to not be numbing out, to not be avoiding how I feel about a thing? What if I let myself feel grief or loss, even though my fear is that if I let myself feel that, it would, I would drown in it, right? That's the fear. If I start crying, I'm never going to stop. If I really, which is not the case, but that was the feeling of it, which got in the way. And so that became the work of concretely, oh, let me go see a therapist. Oh, let me go to some 12-step meetings. And actually, the one that was more important to me than like Alcoholics Anonymous or Narcotics Anonymous was this thing called Adult Children of Alcoholics. And they've
Mm-hmm.
changed the name now to Adult Children of Alcoholics and Dysfunctional Families, because that got at how I was living, right? It wasn't just it wasn't just stop using. It was, oh, I'm living in a certain way. I grew up in a dysfunctional family where substance use was present and people had a relationship with it. So that meant how love was expressed, how relationships between people were expressed was always in relationship to these substances. And so I took on certain roles. And so, oh, maybe those roles aren't serving me anymore. Maybe I don't really know who I am or how I want to live now because I'm so caught up in these roles. So let me go to some of these meetings and talk and listen and just be there and just try to like function, feel what's happening without running to kind of titrate it, to blanket it, or to numb it, or to quiet it down. And that was like a slow process. You know? But that becomes like this life piece, right? How do I live? How can I be here? And once I was able to get a little bit functional, right? Like not have panic attacks all the time. I could go to the dining hall without the stimulus being so overwhelming. I could sometimes feel anxious, but still do the thing I needed to do, right? Like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to go outside my room or outside my apartment because I got to go to the store. Like, I'm really anxious. Well, okay, let me feel the anxiety and still take those steps. What is that like? What happens? Let me kind of be the experiment. If I don't know how to live and I'm trying to live, then I have to be the experiment. And I grew up loving and knowing a lot about science, so I could frame it that way and it made sense. Like, oh, okay, so like I'm feeling terror and I still take the steps and I notice afterwards what happened. Well, it was uncomfortable, but it was okay. None of the things that I was afraid were going to happen actually happened. And I got the thing and I came home and like now, like, okay, I made it, but like I made it. So maybe these feelings aren't going to be the thing that, like, I was actually more dangerous to myself than the feelings. You know? But I had to learn that, you know? And that's the work, right? That's the like, oh, I can be grounded a little bit and I can like orient towards the sun, orient
Mm.
towards life, stretch out, be seen, be big, right? Be present. And then I could, once I kind of got that grounding, then I could turn towards, okay, what were these spiritual things that were happening? How do I like make sense of that? How do I find that in a way that is also nourishing and a part of this meaning making? Because it wasn't enough to just be like, okay, now I'm just like functional. Like that's that I don't think would have been enough. Because I knew that there's this other element, right? There's a right this spiritual realm we're talking about, right? What I've so me now, like being a among other things, right, being a priest in this tradition is because I need that, right? I need the depth of specialty, of specialization in relationship with these forces, because that
Mm.
keeps me connected to the depth of meaning in life, separate from what kind of popular culture tells me is the meaning of life. And I can lean on that. I can rely on that. I can grow towards that. And it's not about, oh, success means I have this many followers and I'm seen this way and I have this kind of title and my Instagram's all blowing up and all the things. It's like, oh, there's actually something else which feeds me, which is important for me to be connected to, which gives me meaning beyond that, even beyond the notion of like a title or a sense of identity. Oh, so I was a carpenter for a while, and I know how to do that now, but that's not my trade. Oh, I was a therapist for a while. Oh, I still do that, but that's not my trade again. So those small deaths of like letting go of aspects of identity, right? Oh, maybe
Mm.
who I am is more than these labels, even like priest or creative person or parent or whatever. Like, oh, I'm more than that. Right? I'm beyond that. But these things are also helpful, right? The relativity is helpful. Me being a male is a relative thing. Yeah, I'm a human being that's existing, right? And my experience as being a male is both important in a distinction and whatever. What is it? It means something because our culture says this is what it means.
That's pretty powerful. I just came off a women's retreat a couple of weeks ago, and one of
Mm,
the exercises I did before we started the retreat and created Sacred Ground was I had everybody write every label that they own, every
mm.
label, and then put it up on a board. You're gonna leave your labels here for the next 3.5 days. Every label,
Oh,
whatever label you claim you own,
yeah.
even unwanted ones, you're gonna put on this board.
Mm,
And it's fascinating to sort of see all the labels that people sort of carry with them every day,
yeah.
like luggage.
Yeah. Yeah. And some were like super proud of and like, yes, this is the label. And others were like, I don't want anybody to see that. Right.
Yes,
So what did you notice happened as people were putting those aside for the time being?
people got very light.
Hmm.
People got, it was as if you would have thought they were actually doing it. But when you go through your day, you don't think about the labels. You're just like you just spin the hat according to wherever you got
Mm.
to show up to, right? Like, oop,
Yes.
okay, this is the hat, this is the hat, this is the
Mm.
hat. So when you get to put it down, and you never really get to put it down,
Right.
it's a lightness, and it almost makes you feel like, can I really,
Right.
can I
What
really,
is the need really
can I
for
really
these
put these
hats?
down and
Yeah.
could I ever put them back on? Because I really like not having them.
Right. Right. And I think that that's to me that's an important piece to like orient towards like our personhood. Like we're people, and we can get even more. We're just like light and energy and matter and all the things. We can get into that too. But like even if we just do the person, it's important that we orient towards that. There's a relativity. Like I need to actually put food in the body, right?
Yeah.
That is a relative thing, right? I need to do these things. um, but there's also, oh right, I'm a person, and there's a me without the hat,
Yeah.
right?
And let me reconnect to that.
Yeah,
Let me re-examine, let me hold on to, let me rediscover who
yeah,
that is, because I wear a lot of hats. So it's a nice exercise, and
mm,
grounds people back to their person, you know.
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah. And to me, that's the like. There's more of a taste of what is liberation in that place.
yes.
Right. So imagine creating
Oh.
structures and policies and practices that encourage that lightness,
Hmm.
right? And that we actually can get like our needs met, the needs of our beloveds met in that
Yeah.
versus like, oh, I got to put this hat on because then when I show up here, right, they'll listen to me,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Right. Or I got to put this hat on to protect me from that.
Yeah.
And, imagine if there was more space to have less. It's like, oh, I can put that down and somehow I'm still existing, right? I'm still
Mm,
here. There's still a me, whatever that is. And then we can get all creative about that me while
I
still
love
being
it.
very, concrete.
Well, thank you for this very important conversation. And it's a very important conversation
Mm,
because I know people who are struggling
yeah.
with that whole being in the void and not
Yes.
not seeing their way out, and to hear you talk so beautifully and confidently about that journey. I think that is such a lighthouse. It's such Enroue, it is such a lighthouse. I can't even
Mm,
tell you.
mm. It's what's so I appreciate hearing that, right? And really like I remember being in that time and someone like, well, do it like, well, what are you interested in doing? Why don't you just do a thing, right? Kind of start a hobby. And I was like, nah, that ain't it. It's deeper than that. And I didn't know, right? And so I think that there's piece of like, there isn't one answer. And sometimes it's like you just do a thing to kind of keep yourself going
Hmm.
and then be open to like what those possibilities of meaning for you might be.
Mhm.
Let that have some space. What gives me meaning? Let me be open to it, right? I didn't create that little light, but I could be curious about it, right? And say, I know what this void is. I know where that road is going. And I can always go back to that road, but I don't know into this light, curiosity, possibility, something with meaning, right? That there's a me without the hat that could be here. That's, I think, really what it was. Oh, there's a you without the hat. Because I was
Mhm.
all lost in all the hats and all the masks.
Yeah.
You know.
Thank you
So
so
thank you,
much.
Babz.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm telling you, a lighthouse moment. Thank you,
Mm,
Harry, for holding
thank
us
you, Harry.
down. I know I'm a little bit over.
Thank you all. Be
Thank you,
well, everyone.
Enroue, and I
All right
will
now.
see you soon.
All right now.